Morning you guys, it's Karen, and I thought I would come and do possibly the final grief diary that I will do, but it has now been a year since Dad died, and so I thought it was quite significant and a good time to talk to you about how I'm feeling about it all, because I know that a lot of you have gone through it and find it comforting that, you know, somebody else is going through it too. So the year was coming up and I was feeling really anxious about it, because I kind of had hoped that it would pass and I wouldn't remember it. And before Dad died, whenever anybody would talk about, you know, the year's anniversary, I would think to myself that I wouldn't want to personally remember that, you know, and I think, I don't know, I'd want to just forget that date. But I think I've said to you before, as soon as somebody dies, you realise, especially if you're the executor, you realise that that date is kind of burned in your memory and there's no way of getting past it. And I had one small moment where I thought, oh, has that date gone? But of course it hadn't. I just had hoped that it had passed and I hadn't realised. But it came closer and closer. It was a Sunday. It was last Sunday, and I was thinking, it feels like I'm going to go through it all again. It's so weird, but I was like, I'm sort of dreading Sunday, because I almost feel like I'm going to get that call again. I'm going to have to go over and I'm, you know, going to experience finding his body, saying goodbye to him, trying to get my head around everything, just the chaos of the day. And like I said, it's a really weird feeling to think that you're going to go through it again when you haven't. Although my husband, of course, was great, and he was saying, oh, it's normal to have flashbacks. And that's the other thing, because it was a year, I could think of nothing else. It was constantly on my mind. So that was a bit upsetting. A few people asked me what I was going to do for the day, and that started to make me feel guilty, because I had specifically planned to do nothing for the day. I did not want to remember or commemorate that day, because it was the worst day of my life. And you know, I had my dad for 47 years, 48 years. Like, why would I remember the one day that was the worst day of my experience with him? You know, it was just awful. And I thought, there's no way I want to remember that day. But, you know, there's just no getting around that. You remember that day. But I certainly wasn't going to commemorate it or anything. You know, don't get me wrong, I know that people do, and I totally understand. We all deal with it differently. And in fact, my brother had said he was going to go, I don't know if he did in the end, but he was going to go to the Arsenal ground where they have had a plaque put up for my dad saying, Father, Gentleman and Gooner. And they were just going to have, you know, a glass of champagne and a cheers to the plaque. And I think that's lovely. But for me, I just didn't want it any attention brought to it. And Kev actually specifically organised his golf on the Saturday so that he was available on the Sunday. And he was so good. He said to me, right, when Sunday comes, we just do whatever you want to do. It's like, if you feel like going off on your own and shopping, that's great. If you want to come for a walk and a family walk, we'll do that. Whatever you fancy doing, let's figure it out. And he said, but then you don't need to plan it. You can just do whatever. And actually, we had a fairly normal Sunday. We went for a lovely walk on the beach with Watson. Actually, I'm saying it was a nice Sunday. There was a blood incident with Watson that had us worried, but thankfully he's fine. And that kind of certainly took my mind off it a little bit. Watson also came up and gave me a cuddle, which is really unusual. Watson is not a cuddly dog. If you see pictures of Watson cuddling me, it's because I've bribed him up with a treat and he doesn't stay very long. But he jumped up on my bed at the night time, and the last time he did that was a year ago when Dad died, so I thought that was unusual. What I did realise from a post, actually, that my brother had put a Facebook post up and had said, you know, that he wasn't going to be sad on the Sunday, but he said, you know, it's been a terrible year, not only because Dad died, but he had no funeral to attend and no resting place to visit. And obviously I knew he didn't attend the funeral. Everybody in our family had to attend online. I was the only family member there because it was in Scotland, and my dad's family are all down south, and it was during lockdown and nobody could travel. And so I knew that, but I hadn't thought about the rest in place. Now with my dad, my dad had the last joke with when he died, because in his will he ticked burial and cremation, and I smiled when I saw it, and I think that's probably what he wanted, because I remember asking him, because obviously we've completed his will and then Kev witnessed it, and he said, right, tick both, he said, because I don't know, so you can decide, you know. And it did make me smile when I saw it. But I went for cremation because firstly, I'm the only person that lives up here that is related to Dad. So I didn't want to make it so that people felt like they had to come up here to visit his grave, because it's a long way to come. And obviously also we're in the middle of lockdown. But not only that, I don't know that we being myself and Kev are going to stay here. We possibly will be moving to Glasgow if Kev's offices move. You know, we're also thinking about a house in the country. There's plenty of places we may go, and that would just make me feel like I was leaving Dad. So I didn't want there to be a headstone or anything like that. What I had hoped with the ashes, and I still hope, is that I can hopefully have my own garden with grass at some point and bury them in the ground and put a tree there. That would be what I would like to do. As a sort of my own memorial, we're getting fencing done at the front of our house, and I'm going to put a memorial bench out there with a little plaque on, because Dad just loved sitting out on the bench when he was here to have his cigarette. You know, he'd always go out to have his cigarette, so that's what I'm going to do. But I did feel sad when I realised that for the rest of my family, and I believe they are going to organise a memorial. And that's something else that had been mentioned before, and I totally understood how everybody else in the family wanted this memorial, because like I said, they weren't able to say their goodbyes. They didn't come to the funeral. They weren't able to come to the funeral. But for me, I felt like I still don't know whether I will attend or not, but it's unlikely, because for me, I don't want to put myself through anything like the funeral again. Certainly not now, because like I said, it was the worst day was finding him, but the funeral was probably the second worst day of my life, or as equal. And I have had my goodbyes. I did see his body. I did see the coffin. I did give my eulogy, you know. And what surprised me about grieving is how I am with like photos and things like that, because I can at least look at photos now. I've posted a few photos on Instagram when I talk about him, but I do it with a really heavy heart. Like, I look through the photos and I quickly choose one and I put it up. And then I immediately move the photos. Like, if they're on my desktop, I immediately move them back in a folder. If I come across a photo in the drawer that needs to be sorted, because I've got a lot of photos that need to be sorted, I quickly put it away. I was looking through this box I've got where I put it's like a holding place for paperwork and things like that. And I was looking through this paperwork, so I needed to find, can't remember, the cremation certificate, and there was a photo, and I just sort of picked it up and showed it to Kevin. I said, "Is that Dad?" And he said yes, and I put it down again. I just can't spend any amount of time looking at photos, and I don't know. I hope that will change. I would really like to arrange all the photos and have a book just of photos of Dad, and I'd like to have one maybe on the wall, and I know Dad would love that, because Dad was very much about photos on the wall. His little flat was covered in photos of everybody, and it's something he commented on about here. He was like, "You haven't got any photos of a family on the wall?" I was like, "I know, that's just not my thing, you know." But I'd like to do that one day, but at the moment it would just break my heart having a picture of Dad anywhere that I could see. I can see that picture where it says "Sail on Silver Girl," and that hasn't been upsetting me. I've really enjoyed having that. It's in the kitchen, it's opposite where I sit, and I find that comforting, but I can't have a photo just now. I also got a tape of his voice sent to me by bra strap problems, sent to me by my lovely mum, my stepmum. She sent me a tape of Dad's voice, and it was him giving a testimony in our church about how he got custody of myself and my brother again. But I haven't listened to it yet. I haven't been able to listen to it yet. I know that it's there, and if I want to listen to it again, it's there. But I listened to a little bit of my dad speaking at my wedding, and it was just too much for me. So yeah, I think that's an unusual reaction. Knowing myself, I just didn't ever imagine I would be like that. I thought I would be more of a wallower. You know, I thought I would like to put on sad music, look at the photos, but I think there gets to a point where you've cried every tear you think you've got, and it's exhausting, and you just want some happiness, you know. And so I am, in a way, I suppose, bury in my head a little bit. But it's not to say I didn't grieve, because, you know, I had those times of grieving and I didn't need the photos and I didn't need the music. And music still gets to me, as you guys know. I told you that, you know, if a sad song comes on, that's it, I'm off. So with the ashes, I'm going to send some of the ashes to my brother, and he's going to, I think, bury them somewhere for the memorial. So that'll be really nice, that they will have, you know, there will be a resting place for him down south. It's funny, when we talked about the ashes, I asked Eve, his wife, if she wanted half of the ashes, and she said yes. And I remember saying to her that I've given her the left side, and I knew that that was Dad's kind of humour, and that he would be smiling at that. And so I thought, I'm going to tell my brother I'm sending him his right arm, you know, or something like that. And yeah, Dad would find that very, very funny. So I'm going to keep a little bit and send the rest to Andrew. Possibly a good thing is that I think we've had all of the firsts now. So we already had Father's Day last year. I had his first birthday, and I don't know whether I told you guys that we celebrated that. I'm happy to celebrate his birthday. That feels right to me, to celebrate his birthday. So we got a Chinese takeaway, because that was his favourite thing to do, was to come over to my house and we'd all have a Chinese takeaway. So we did that on my birthday, and that made me happy. So I was like, yeah, I'm still acknowledging it's his birthday, and enjoying food as he did, you know. So we've had his birthday. My birthday was the day after the funeral, so we'd already had my birthday. We had Christmas. Father's Day was after he died. And so I don't think there's any first left. Now, we've had the year has passed. I suppose there is still the year to the funeral, which hopefully, again, I'm really hoping that will pass without me remembering too much. But, you know, my birthday's going to be, on my actual birthday, I think we're going for a picnic with Watson, and it will feel weird because it will be quite some years before my birthday feels unrelated to Dad dying, because with it being the day after the funeral and only a week after he died, of course I felt some kind of way, you know. So I think it'll be quite a few years before that changes. But the biggest thing I found for me lately is I have been a bit more upset, and it's nothing to do with the year. It's more to do with the fact that lockdown is over and everything is going back to normal. But for me, it will never go back to normal. And that's something that was unexpected for me as well. So I don't know any of you, I know a lot of you, like myself, lost people during lockdown. And lockdown meant that we were all very insular, you know, and there wasn't things going on. But now it's like everybody is celebrating that we can go shopping, and even myself, you know, I met my friend for lunch, and it was actually when I went to meet my friend for lunch, Kev was able to drive me, and I was just really tearful all the way there, because it was like, this is a normal thing. This is something that I would have done. I would have met my friend for lunch every month. And my dad had big plans for when lockdown was over. He was going to go on a little cruise with Eve around Scotland. And I was like, so he won't be able to do that. And we're now allowed people in our houses. The first thing I would have done would have been to have Dad over, and obviously I can't do that. And yeah, so life will never go back to normal for me. So I have to get used to a new normal outside of lockdown. So that's something I noticed. I haven't had the tattoo done, because that's something I could have done just now. I think because Kev doesn't, I really like the one on my chest here, but Kev didn't particularly like it. And that's quite an obvious one, you know, when Kev's standing looking at me, to see something that he doesn't like the look of is not something I want to do. But also it's something related to my dad. It's just feels a bit odd. He, I think, preferred it on my arm, but I wasn't so keen with having it on my arm. And because I got that amazing, beautiful gift from Jenny, one of my viewers, her husband painted me that picture with Ceylon Silver Girl. I've got Ceylon Silver Girl in a form that I can look at and take comfort from. So I didn't feel like it was quite as pressing to get a tattoo or something like that, you know. I'd like something with the whole thing on. I might put that somewhere, which is because he used to say bits and pieces. Sometimes he'd say, sail on Silver Girl, I'm sailing right behind you. Or other times he'd say, your dreams are on their way, your time has come to shine, because it is, you know, a little part of a song. It's a part of a Simon and Garfunkel song. And what I found really ironic about it is the song is actually about was it Simon? It was about his wife going grey, and I have gone grey. You know, between last year and now, I now have grey highlights, and I had barely any grey this time last year. So there's some irony in that, you know. Something that I thought I would do, and I haven't done, is I thought I would be literally booking a psychic as soon as lockdown was over. But I've actually become less of a believer since Dad passing, and I'm not sure why. I suppose because every time I talk about him on Instagram or to people that are a believer, they will say, he's still with you, you'll feel him, he's always looking over you, he's always there, things like that. And I can honestly say that I have never felt his presence in the last year. And I was probably the closest person to my dad, barring his wife, of course, but I would be the person that was closest to him throughout our lives. And I have never felt his presence. Well, other than the cupboard opening, I can't think of an excuse for that. I can't think of any other reason for the blooming cupboard doors opening. But, and that wasn't a nice feeling, his presence, if you know what I mean. But there's been, you know, there's been the robins appearing, and weirdly, I find comfort in that, even though I don't believe it 100%, you know. And we had something that happened the other day that I was like, I was desperate to find out what it was, because I was like, if I cannot find a reason for this, then I'm going to put it down to it being Dad. And I was sitting on the sofa, and I said to Kev the other day, I can smell aftershave. And I said, can you smell it? And he said, no. And I thought, well, if Kev can't smell it, then it's just something in my mind, you know. And that day passed. And then another day, a few days later, I said to him, I can smell like aftershave again. And I said, but it's really weird. I said, because it's in the middle. It's in the middle of the room, well, sort of the middle of the room, and it's in the middle as in it's not at the top, it's not at the bottom, it's right smack in the middle, and it was by the seat that my dad would sit on when he was over here. And I was like, okay, it didn't necessarily smell like Dad's aftershave, because he wore all sorts of different aftershaves and probably Old Spice, and this didn't smell like Old Spice, but I was like, it smells like aftershave. So I said to Kev, can you smell it? And he was like, got up and he was like, oh, I can. He said, I can smell it. And I was like, okay. And I said to him, right, smell me and see if it's anything on me. And he was checking everything on me. He was like, nope, it's not you. We checked, my little vanity bags were there. We checked all of the, like there's a throw on the sofa. We checked everything, and I was like, what the hell is it? It's driving me crazy not knowing what this is, you know. And he said, maybe it is your dad. Maybe he's being more subtle than opening the cupboard doors, because he knew that scared you, you know. And he was laughing at me because we carried on, I think we were watching a film, we carried on watching it. Every now and then I'd be like, you know, trying to figure out where the smell came from. Anyway, it wasn't until later that I realised exactly where the smell was coming from. I was like, okay, I know what it was. I changed fabric softener, and I had a towel on the radiator, and it was obviously just that. It was only when I was taking the towel off the radiator, you know, taking the washing off the radiators and whatnot, I was like, got that same smell again, and I was like, that's what it is. It obviously just, that's where the scent was sitting. So I would still like to see a psychic, I definitely would, but I think a lot of them are still doing it over the phone, and I'm just not a fan of the phone in any way, shape or form. I don't like doing online calls or anything like that. I haven't done any in lockdown. Actually, that's not true. I did phone my stepmom on a video call. I had thought about going to a spiritual church, but then a spiritualist church, but then I thought, I feel like it would be a bit deceitful of me to do that, because, not deceitful, but I'm not a Christian and I don't believe in that. So a spiritualist church is still people that believe in God, and so I think it would be like almost using them, you know, just to get a free psychic kind of thing. And I know you may not get a reading, but I just feel like that's not, I don't have any belief, so it's not the place for me. So I think it will be the kind of thing where the psychic presents itself. If it's meant to be, you know, I will find somebody. I've looked up many times to find one in my area, and there's none that anybody recommends or you know, that sort of jumps out at me. So if I ever find one, it's something I would definitely consider going to. And I would go again to see like John Edward or any of these live psychics, because I just really enjoy those kind of shows anyway. But yeah, it's not been top of my agenda, and I thought it would have been. I do still speak to Dad, you know, I chat to him all the time, and I find that a comfort. One thing I will say is I don't think I have achieved my goal of being as jolly as my dad and sort of keeping his personality going, and that's something I'm working on. But it's really hard with the migraines, you know, with the constant migraines, and I have felt really resentful of the migraines because they took so much time away from what I would have spent with Dad, because there were so many times where I had told him I was coming over and then I was like, I can't, my head is just bursting, you know. And so I am resentful of how much time that's taken away, because there was a lot of things in my head that was like, right, once I'm over these migraines, I'll take Dad to do this, or I can, you know, maybe take this off his hand and do this once a week, or, you know. And he was great because he would be like, no, you've got enough with your migraines, you know. And so I am resentful of that. But I do know there's nothing I can do about it now, and so there's no point kind of getting too hung up on it. Anyway, I think that is everything. I think that's a long enough chat about grief. But like I said, I know that a lot of you had gone through grief, had lost a parent or even a partner at the same time as me, and so you will also have had your, you know, 1 year anniversary, etc. So I thought it was a nice time to do a video. I will probably not do any more grief diaries specifically, and I hope that you are all coping as well as can be expected. The advice that you guys gave me in the comments over the last year have been so helpful to me, because, you know, so many of you were saying you can't go under it or around it, you have to go through it. And so a lot of the time I allowed myself to cry when I could, because I accepted, you're right, you can't avoid it, you have to go through the grief, and there's nothing else like it, you know. It's nothing prepares you for losing a parent, and you can't, there's no good way around it. There's nothing anybody can do that makes you feel better. It will be completely different to how you would possibly expect it. You'll react differently, you know. Everything is kind of unknown, and it's really nice knowing other people know how you feel. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it, and like I said, I hope you're all doing well. So I will speak to you again soon.